everybody. Welcome to episode 55 of the Old Men Magic Podcast. It is Monday, August 28th, 2023. Thank you for joining us for another episode. Today is a very special day, Alex. I'm going to celebrate. It's my birthday. It's my birthday. Happy birthday to me. It was Alex's birthday just 6 days ago. You might ask why we didn't shoot off a confetti cannon for Alex's birthday. Well, we didn't happen to record on Alex's birthday.
No show on my birthday.
So keep that in mind next year, Alex. If you're like, I want a confetti cannon, we have to record on your birthday. Then you get the confetti cannon.
I can't be blowing up that confetti cannon. It was like a silent ninja confetti cannon.
Was it loud or no?
No, I couldn't hear it at all.
Okay, good, because it's really loud over here.
Oh.
I actually, when I bought these.
Are your ears ringing?
No, it's not that loud. When I bought these the first time, I tried one out. I read some of the reviews and people were like, it's really loud. And I wanted to see how loud it was just to be sure. So I made what was a really stupid mistake. To test it out, I went upstairs and I walked into the bathroom and I shut off in the bathroom, which just created more echo. And it actually hurt my ears. Like my ears stung. And then it was so loud, I was like, oh man, I wonder like if neighbors heard that. It kind of sounded like a gunshot, but I didn't know if it really sounded like a gunshot to people who were outside of the bathroom or if it just sounded like a gunshot in the bathroom. I had to tell my mom afterwards because she was here when I was recording. I was like, I'm going to do a confetti cannon during the show. If you hear what sounds like a gunshot, just know it's a confetti cannon only, so don't freak out.
And then if the police ask you, just tell them it was a confetti cannon.
A confetti cannon only. Anyways, that's my birthday celebration. Let's get into the show now. So last week, we talked about the first Miracle Grow deck. It was Alan Comer's Miracle Grow deck that he built in 2001. He took to GP Las Vegas. This week, we're going to learn a little bit about how that deck evolved in its earlier years. Because while that was a kick-ass deck, it placed ninth placed at GP Las Vegas. Wasn't fully optimized. There are definitely some changes that could have been made. Before we get into the first segment, I'm going to ask if you're watching us on YouTube, please click the like button. The like button. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, subscribe there as well. We love subscriptions on all platforms. So now that that's out of the way, Alex, let's get into segment 1, which I am calling More Miracle Grow. So last week, like I said, we learned about this deck. Alan Comer's Miracle Grow deck that he built in 2001. One of the most interesting things about this deck to me was the fact that it ran on just 10 lands. It was able to do that because he built a deck out of cards that only had 1 to 2 casting costs, 1 to 2 mana casting costs for all the cards he was expecting to hard cast. Everything above 2 was some version of a pitch spell. So it wasn't actually necessary to hard cast these spells. So you can run on a low mana count. Even then, 10 is still a little bit low. I mean, it's not a little bit low, it's pretty low. In addition to running low casting cost cards, he did another thing that we learned about when we first learned about the Turbo Xerox deck. He made sure to put in low casting cost cantrips and library manipulation spells, like Sleight of Hand in this case. We got some Brainstorms. This is an extended deck. That's why you see Brainstorm. That's why you see a dual land in the form of Tropical Islands. These low casting cost cantrips, library manipulation spells, it's common practice for every 2 of these to remove 1 land from your deck. That's the Turbo Xerox innovation. So it also allowed him to run Winter Orb. Most decks that people build, they're not built with this low of a mana curve. So pretty much whoever you're playing, Winter Orb is going to hurt your opponent more than it's going to hurt you. The goal of this deck was to play out an early Quirion Dryad. If you don't remember Quirion Dryad, this is 1 green, 1 colorless, 1/1. Whenever you play a white, blue, black, or red spell, you put a +1/+1 counter on the Dryad. Goal is to get this out as quickly as possible cast a boatload of cheap spells like Brainstorms, Sleight of Hands, low casting cost merfolk, to pump the Dryad, to protect this Dryad with free counter spells or low casting cost counter spells, and then swing when you got your Dryad pumped all nice and big. If Dryad is wiped off the table, you have the merfolk strategy as a backup win condition. Play your merfolks, pump your merfolks with Lord of Atlantis. This was a deck that I really liked. I liked it for multiple reasons, but there was still room for improvement, of course. Alan and others made a number of changes to this deck, and we're going to talk about some of those changes. So
I was going to ask.
Okay, what were we going to say?
I was going to ask if 10-land Stompy grows out of this. Is that like a later deck that people did based on this idea? You know?
I need to figure that out too. We need to go through 10-land Stompy. I don't know if it was right after this or contemporaneous with this or right before this. I think it was all around the same time, because I think 10-land Stompy really became viable when you had Land Grant come out.
Okay.
So I'm assuming they were both around the same time, but I'm not entirely sure. We need to do a 10-land Stompy series. Initial 10-land Stompy deck, evolution of 10-land Stompy. I don't know if 10-land Stompy was ever as competitive as this deck either. That would be interesting to see if 10-land Stompy was ever like dominating tables. I heard about it when I first started playing pre-modern, and I know people build 10-land Stompy in pre-modern, but 10-land Stompy isn't like winning any pre-modern tournaments.
Okay.
It's like a tier 2 or maybe a tier 3 deck. It's not a tier 1 deck. It's fun to play.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's cheap to build, which is why I built one and I really like it. But it's not like a killer deck in the format.
Cool.
So the first Miracle Grow variant that I'm going to look at is this deck that was built by Alex Schwartzman. I'm going to have a hell of a time pronouncing his name, so I'm just going to say Alex. It's a pretty similar deck. The strategy's the same. Just swapping out some cards, putting in some other cards that he thinks are more optimal, or cards that have mechanics, new mechanics that work well with a lot of the cards that were already in this deck. So the idea here, again, is to play the Dryad early, pump it with low casting cost spells, instants, and to protect it with free counters. It's still a 10-land deck, 4 tropical islands, 6 islands. It still runs the 4 land grants. It still runs the 4 winter orbs. And it plays a pile of pitch spells like Force of Will in foil.
I see you trimmed down 1 curiosity from 4 to 3 from the other deck.
He did. He cut down 1 curiosity. I actually have a note here. He cut 1 curiosity. Even 3 seems like more than I'd want to play.
I think the deck I have that I have it in, I did the same thing. I was looking at it and I was like, I'm not sure if I really need 4 of them.
It seems like a bit much. 3 seems like a bit much. I can think of, well...
Although, you can have more than 1 working for you at the same time, you know? So it's like...
It is true. He runs fewer creatures, so that's 1 change. Minus 1 curiosity. He runs fewer creatures in general. It's no longer really a merfolk deck, which is one of the things that I loved about the first one.
You're sad.
It makes me sad, man.
I'm glad I see Gaia Skyfolk is still in there though, which, you know, I guess like reinforces our belief that it is good.
It's always good. I mean, you know,
I think it's good.
We both love 2/2 flyers. I have a soft spot for any 2/2 2 casting cost creature with some special ability.
Yeah, that's neat.
That's my lane, man. That's what gets me going. That's why I love Longbow Archer. You show me a 2/2 for 2 with a special ability, I'm into it. Kids these days, probably not so much. They're like, that's terrible. Why would you ever play that card? But it's the kind of thing that gets me excited. And they're good in this type of format.
It reminds me of getting like these like multicolored cards from the dark, you know, or legends.
Oh yeah, I love multicolored cards too. It's even better for me. It's worse from a gameplay perspective if it's a multicolored card that's 2 casting costs for 2, because you have to have 2 different land types, 2 different mana types available. But it's more exciting for me as somebody who always loved Legends and loves gold bordered cards. Love them. I have a lot of decks built right now that are like full of gold bordered cards. Not always the most optimal things to run in these decks, but I'm like, I love this gold bordered card. I got to keep it in. No longer a merfolk deck, but he does keep the guy's Skyfolk. He removed the merfolk looter, which I liked. But if I had to remove something, I would probably remove the merfolk looter. And he removed the Lord of Atlantis, because if you're not loaded up on different merfolk, then why keep the Lord of Atlantis in there? He did add another creature threat in the form of Werebear. So while it became no longer a backup, a stealth merfolk deck, it is now a Werebear deck. And I love the Werebear, man. The Werebear is great. It's 1 colorless, 1 green, 1/1. Tap to add green to your mana pool. It has threshold. So it gets +3/+3 when you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard.
Which isn't bad with this deck with a lot of low casting cost things that you're
perfect
throwing
so
out.
I like how this is evolving, because they're adding cards from new sets with new mechanics that synergize with the existing card base. You know, when you have all of these cards that are cheap to play and that you want to play quickly because they help you dig through your deck, like Brainstorm or Sleight of Hand, Gush. They help you sort your deck. You know, those worked great with the Dryad, but now you have a new card that those work well with a new mechanic that those cards work well with.
And so it helps the 10 land situation since it works as a manimal.
Perfect. And it helps with 10 lands, and it helps you play around your Winter Orb, because you're only untapping 1 land a turn, but now you're untapping 1 land and your Werebear, which is pretty much going to allow you to hardcast anything in your deck, except for this, because it's 2 blue.
Okay.
He cut 1 Curiosity. He mainboarded 1 Misdirection. So I believe this was a sideboard card in the first one we looked at, Alan Comer's. Yeah, Misdirection was sideboarded. We now have a main board Misdirection, which, I mean, why not? I don't have any Misdirections yet, so I've never played them, but I do like Misdirection. I remember when we learned about this.
It's funny because I was messing around with this card a little bit on Mox Field just like 2 weeks ago before we did like the last episode. And then I saw it in the deck that you brought up. So I felt like, okay, good. I'm not worried about using this. Like other people like it, you know, it was reassuring to me.
I mean, in this shell, especially, it gives you another way to save your Dryad.
Yeah, your Winter Orb.
Another way to save your Winter Orb. Yeah, like any removal that they send your way, which they're gonna want to send removal your way. Of course, people always want to play removal against you, but you have a couple targets in here that are like major targets for removal. Your Winter Orb, which is going to be a nuisance to almost everybody, and your Dryad, which is the 1 creature that you can get really big. They're going to want to get rid of those as soon as possible. Misdirection, not just counter it, but you could send it back at something that they have on the board. So that's great.
I'm gonna forget what the card's called now. There's another card that this deck I was playing with in that same deck that would kind of be good in here, I think. It's a 2 casting cost counter spell, 1 blue, 1 colorless, that counters a spell that targets one of your creatures, and then you draw a card. It has a cantrip effect.
Okay.
It's called Confound, and it's from Plane Shift.
We must have talked about
spell
that. Right?
Say what?
We must have talked about that during our cantrip episode. Did we leave it out?
Yeah, we went past it pretty quickly, I think, because it's sort of niche. It's just creatures, but it does say counter target spell that targets 1 or more creatures. So that's kind of good, I guess. As long as it's not just a general wipe, it's something that has multiple targets, you can still counter it.
I was going to pull it up here. MTG stocks is so slow sometimes. Don't they know we're trying to do a show? Let me transition to Scryfall. I love the MTG stocks, but sometimes it must have something to do with my recording because it's never that slow when I'm just on it.
Yeah, it's probably because
looking
you're doing
around.
multiple things at once.
But there are some things that move really slow when I'm recording, like when I try to play a YouTube video. Oh, yeah. Okay. I remember the art on this now. I do remember this. I just needed to look at that. What is this art actually?
I don't know.
Is he inside of is he being contained within like some sort of sphere?
That's what it looks like to
Yeah.
me.
That is
Or the
what's
window of something inside a ship.
That's what I was trying to figure out. Is like somebody inside of a ship looking out, or is he like trapped inside of some like sphere that
Yeah.
contains his energy?
But anyway, some of the cards in that deck reminded me of this. I don't know that it's as good, or obviously, find its way in there, but
No, I mean that wouldn't be bad at all. Depending on your opponent's deck, depending on what the environment is.
yeah. Now you can't use it to protect your winter orb, so that's not as good, but
I said depending on your opponent's deck. What does this do again?
yeah.
Counter target spell that targets one of your old creatures. Yeah, okay. If your opponent has a lot of creature removal. And it has to target too, so it won't get around
Like a Wrath of God, or
I was gonna say winter orbs, Wrath of God, yeah, earthquake, stuff like that. And then one more new card. Well, Opt 2, we know Opt.
Mhm.
A good scrying card and a cantrip. Withdraw. Now, I don't remember if we talked about this before, if we had ever seen this card. If you showed this card to me at some point, I had forgotten it. But I thought this is pretty cool.
I feel like I saw it at one point.
I really like the art. And it's 2 blue, instant. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Then return another target creature to its owner's hand unless its controller plays one. So
That's good.
you wouldn't necessarily want to return your Dryad to your hand. I'm assuming the role this card plays in this deck isn't to protect your Dryad, because if you were to bounce your Dryad back, you'd lose all its counters. Now, if you just needed to protect your Dryad, you might just want to deal with that sometimes.
Yeah.
If you're playing a game where it's a long game, there's a lot of back and forth. They've already cleared 3 of your Dryads off the board, got rid of your werebears. You need to keep some kind of threat in the game. Maybe you do that as a last resort, but I'm assuming this is used to like clear blockers out of the way. And I really like that idea. When you have a card like Quirion Dryad that you can pump really big that doesn't have trample, if you're playing a deck that has a lot of creatures, a lot of small creatures that they could just chump block with forever, a token generator deck or something.
Yeah.
If you can withdraw.
Yeah, plus since it's like a winter orb deck, now you're filling up their hand with stuff that they have to recast.
I said token generator. I guess I wouldn't work with a token generator deck because at most you can return 2 creatures. But it still could get rid of chump blockers.
It's still not bad. You're still taking out 2, you're destroying them at that point, because they're tokens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's neat. It's versatile because you can use it to bounce 2 of your opponent's creatures, or you could like bounce 1 of theirs and then use the. Oh wait, no, that wouldn't work. You can't split it up because it's the owner of the first creature. I see. Okay.
Well, return target creature to its owner's hand.
Yeah.
Then return another target creature to its owner's hand unless its controller plays 1.
Yeah. So could I use that? Maybe I could use that to bounce 1 of your creatures and then bounce 1 of my creatures because I didn't play the 1.
The way I'm reading it, I want to say yes.
Yeah. So that's neat.
Let's look it up to see if there's anything on. Look it up on Gather real quick to see if there's anything. But I like this card. I thought this card was cool. Rulings. The 2 creatures may have different controllers.
There we go.
It just must target 2 different creatures. So yeah. Not bad at all. So this is the version put together by Alex Schwartzman. I like it. I like the direction it's moving in because I really like the addition of a threshold creature. It gives you a second bigger body. Werebear's not going to get as big as your Dryad could possibly get, but after you've played a bunch of your cantrips, Werebear's going to be a 4/4 for just 2 mana. And if you got the board locked down with a Winter Orb, there's not going to be a lot of creatures coming down that are bigger than 4/4, probably on your opponent's side.
Yeah. And you have a flyer too. So you have a couple ways to do something.
Next version we're going to look at incorporated a third color, and it allowed the player to play more of a control game. I really like this direction. But the one I'm going to pull up, the one that I saw, is called Super Grow. And this is a version that was put together by somebody named Ben Rubin. Ben Rubin's Super Grow. So there's multiple reasons why I love the addition of white. You can see, creature-wise, he bought back the looter. He must really like that draw a card, discard a card, draw a card, discard a card. And like I said last episode, I actually like that a lot too. I found that ability to be even more useful than I thought it would be. And I actually found myself pretty quickly like discarding lands, even though I only have 10 lands in the deck. It's like, I don't need this land. So let me get rid of that land, pull more heat like that. I love the splash of white because it allowed him to add some different creatures. One is Mystic Enforcer, which every listener of the podcast knows about already because I added it as the last creature to my first ever old frame commander deck called the Pump. Mystic Enforcer is 2 colorless, 1 green, 1 white, 3/3 protection from black, but it also has threshold. And when you reach threshold, the Enforcer gets 3/3 and has flying. So this becomes a 6/6 flyer with protection from black for 4 mana. Kept the Werebear in here. So now you're adding another card that has threshold that takes advantage of your tendency to play a lot of really low casting cost spells very quickly early in the game to fill up your graveyard.
Yeah.
I love,
and the merfolk looter milling cards for you.
Oh yeah. You can fill up your graveyard even faster. I forgot about that. That's probably actually the main reason he added it back in, because of the synergy with threshold. Now you have 7 cards that go really well with. You have 7 cards with threshold. 2 other reasons he added the white. It allowed him to play 2 of my favorite cards. One is Swords to Plowshares, which is the best removal in the game, probably. And 2 is Meddling Mage, which is a card that wasn't printed back in the day when we first played, but is a card that I'm putting into like every single deck I'm building now that we've gotten back into Magic. I love this card. Not that great when you're playing against somebody for the first time, like when I was facing you with my Meddling Merfolk deck and you were on Ornithopters the other day. I played Meddling Mage. I certainly wasn't going to name Ornithopter Unstable Mutation, because who would do something so ridiculous? I named Plow. I don't even know if he had Plow in that deck or not. But then we're on game 2 and game 3. I name Shield Sphere. I name Unstable Mutation. Then you just got a handful of Unstable Mutations and 0 casting cost artifacts. You can't do anything. It's a hell of a card. I love Meddling Mage.
Yeah, it's very good. I know it's famous. It's frustrating to play opposite. Cheap casting cost, good effect for the mana.
So what did he do here? He added more creatures. There's 19 creatures in this deck. So this is the most creature heavy deck we've seen so far. It's for control, to draw more and aid threshold, and for beef. I love beefy creatures. I love killing with creatures. So I love this deck because it has more control and more beef. He's still running the Winter Orb. He went down to 3. There's fewer like low casting cost blue spells. So you can't just rip off as many low casting cost blue spells turns 1 through 3 to pump your Dryad as quickly as possible. I look at this deck and I'm like, there's not as much reliance on the Dryad, so you don't
Yeah,
have to
you have
pump
the
it quite as
Mystic
quickly.
Enforcer. Yeah.
He went more land too. So 4 Tundra, 4 Tropical Island, 1 Savannah, 2 Island, and then we get into the Mirage fetch lands, the slow fetches that come in tapped.
Oh, okay.
That I'm sure that's what existed at the time. He
Yeah.
didn't have the benefit of using the fast fetch lands. He still ran land tax, not land tax, land grant in this deck. I play tested this deck a little bit, and then I found myself more often, because you have 16 lands in this deck instead of 10. I found myself more often not being able to take full advantage of land grant.
Yeah.
Although, you can still pay land grant for just 2 mana.
Right.
If
I
you
was
have it
wondering, that was the
regular.
first thing I was wondering when I saw those lands. I'm like, how does this change, just the deck overall? Like, I wonder. I don't know.
I think it changes the land grant game. I don't like the land grant game as much with 16 lands. But I don't know. You got these fetches, slow fetches. So maybe the play is, if you have a slow fetch in your hand, put one out, tap, turn 1. Play the next land turn 2. You only have 16 lands, so maybe you won't have another land in your hand. You could
I was just
also,
gonna say, with 16, you still have few enough lands that the land grant might help you, like in your opening hand, especially like if you don't draw like a good opening hand
that's true.
land wise. So
That's
early
true.
in the game it'll be better. I guess I was wondering more about like you said, casting it, like hard casting it later for 2 mana.
Maybe that's why it's there, though. Maybe it's just there really for those cases where he just doesn't pull land in his opening hand.
That's my favorite thing about
Yeah.
the card, is that you can take 4 lands out and it like protects you from getting mana screwed in your opening hand.
Yeah, and that will still happen sometimes when you just have
Yeah.
16 lands in your deck.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
You could also, even if you just have 1 land and even if you just have 1 land, you play
Like
the
you
land and then
play
you
it.
show your hand. Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe it still makes
that's
perfect
smart.
sense to be in there when you just have 16 lands.
Yeah, since we talked about land grant last week, I've been trying to think a lot about like how to put it into decks. I want to mess around with that.
So I love the addition of white. I love that it allows you to play swords, meddling mage, mystic enforcer. Next one we're going to go to. Schwartzman then ran with this white splash. He updated his Miracle Grow deck to make the version that I think is my favorite so far. I have to find this. Damn it. Cut this out. I thought I pulled them all up already. I forgot to pull this one up. I think I have a deck named Schwartzman 2. Yeah, I do. Schwartzman Miracle Grow 2. Basically, he ran all of the same creatures. He just put in fewer copies of some of them. He runs 2 of Mystic Enforcer instead of 3. I can't remember how many Merfolk Looter were in the last deck we just looked at. He cut the land base back down to 12 from 16. So one, I think this makes land grant even more important. And you get more use out of it when you cut the land further.
Yeah.
But most importantly, it allows you to put even more of these cheap blue spells in. Cheap counters, cheap deck manipulation. More cheap spells to play to pump your Dryad. So I think this is like the perfect balance. This is of creatures to low casting cost instants and sorceries. I think the last deck went a little bit too overboard removing them. This is, in my opinion, like the perfect mix.
The one thing I noticed no one messed with was the foils or the dazes in there. The
Always
other blue
2
cards
foils.
too. Huh?
Always 2 foils, right? 2 foils.
I don't know if
daisies.
it was exactly the same numbers, but
okay.
they're definitely key to the deck, is what I'm saying. Like no one, like you could have my instinct would have been maybe to play around with changing a different counterspell for days because there's so many. And
Yeah.
foil seems a little awkward to use to me sometimes because you have to. It's 2 cards, right? Discard
It
an
is
island
2 cards.
and
Yeah.
another card. Um,
Which
but
can
it
be
might
a
not
lot.
matter in this deck too much. I'd have to play it.
It can
Try
be
it.
a lot, but it's also, good for threshold. If you want to get to
Yeah,
threshold
true
as
too.
fast as
True too.
possible.
Yeah, because it's not exile like Force of Will.
It's not only 2 cards. One of those cards is an island, which can be kind of tough if you're running only 12 lands. And you're only running 1 island. So if you really want to use foil, you're going to have to pitch a tundra or a tropical island. But I guess in a deck where you really want to protect your creatures, it is interesting to bring up, though. Is it as important in this shell where you're not as reliant on keeping your Dryad alive? The
Well,
very first decks we looked at, I'm like, yeah, you need to keep that Dryad alive. So you need to put as many free counterspells in as you can. But here, you pitch a foil to keep the Dryad alive. You've now lost 2 cards. And the foil.
like I
Might
wonder
not
if
be necessary.
I wonder if he tends to play the foil later in the game as opposed to earlier, when then maybe you have like a land in your hand that you don't need anymore.
That is also true.
I've never played with foil, so I don't know like what the good strategies are for using it or like
Neither have I. It is scary to pitch 2 cards. That's 3 cards you're giving up for a counter. So maybe foil is really just used as the last resort counter.
yeah, like late in the game when you need to protect your Mystic Enforcer or your Dryad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Anyways, what I was wondering is how you could convert this to a pre-modern deck. Would this be viable in pre-modern? It seems like it could still be pretty darn strong in pre-modern. I mean, you could take these slow fetches out, switch them up with the fast fetches. You won't have your dual lands anymore, but you do have the allied colored fetches, which are better than these slow fetches. So you just put like 1 or 2 of each basic land, shove as many fetches as you can get in there. Also put in a Mox Diamonds, run 4 Mox Diamonds.
Oh yeah.
Helps you play around Winter Orb, helps you get Threshold faster.
Yeah, maybe Lotus Petal. Lotus Petal is another one I've been messing with, and I'm not sure. I need to figure out how to build decks with that card in it,
Yeah.
because it's 0 casting cost, but you can also only use it once. So I'm not sure how to do the math on like how many lands I can take out or how I can adjust my mana curve when I'm playing with Lotus Petals.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just throw a couple in and make it a 62 card deck? Can I just
you could
add 2 Lotus Petals to a 60 card deck?
Some people just play 61 card decks for fun.
Yeah, I do. I've always done that. I've always kind of been like, oh, there's like 1 more card I want to cram into this deck. I'll just like add 1 more. And if it's like a 0 casting cost card, I don't feel bad about it.
Play a 63 card deck.
Yeah.
Play 67 card deck.
Yeah. I miss that, honestly. I really do. Like back when you're like learning to play and you and your friends are all just open up stuff and you're just playing with whatever you have and you have like 80 card decks.
Mm-hmm.
I miss that a little bit.
I still used to do that a lot when I was first building something. I would just start with more than 60.
Oh, yeah.
And then throughout the course of play, you whittle it down. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I used to do a lot. Play with 69 card decks if you're an idiot. You think that's funny. Oh, no. Nobody's stopping you. Do whatever you want. I've never played Lotus Petal. I don't know what people do with it. My initial thought is I would want Lotus Petal in a deck where I needed to combo off really quick or get something out really quick. Other than
yeah, really fast.
If I didn't want to do something, try to do something broken on turn 1 or 2, I don't think I'd run Lotus Petal. But yeah, I need to learn more about where this deck has evolved. I gotta see, do people play it in pre-modern at all? I have a feeling that it evolved into the Psychotalk deck almost. Because I see just straight up Psychotog decks, but then I also see Growatog decks, which are
Oh
Quirion
yeah, I've heard
Dryad,
that.
Quirion
I've heard that.
Dryad plus Psychotog as like the two win cons. And those seem to me like they would be built very much like these Grow decks. And Psychotog is fairly common in pre-modern. I don't
Yeah.
see Miracle Grow as much in pre-modern, but I do see Psychotogs. Anyways, on to segment 2, Alex. Segment 2 is going to be about something that I know nothing about at all, which is something I saw on Twitter yesterday when I was scrolling on Twitter. I follow this guy named Ristic Studies, who everybody who's big into Magic probably knows about. Look at this. Look what Twitter does. I just try to make a new Twitter that's just all Magic the Gathering focused, and they still have Tim Pool and Diamond and Silk trending. You just can't get away from politics on Twitter. I don't know if you know Tim Pool, Alex.
I don't. I've heard the name Diamond and Silk. I have no idea what that is.
There are two ladies who were like big, they were like massive Trump supporters. So I think they've
Oh.
had like a show or something. And they're both African American women. So Donald Trump would be like, the black people love me. Look,
Oh,
Diamond
yeah.
and Silk, One of them is dead. I think she died from COVID. They were very anti-vaccine, by the way. I don't know if she died. I think she died from COVID. But anyways, my point is they're very political. Both these two people are very political. I want a non-political Twitter.
Yeah.
I like the secret layer trending. What if I do this? I'm not interested in Tim Pool or Diamond and Silk. It won't matter. They'll still be pushed into my feed somehow. But anyways, I follow Ristic Studies, who everybody who's big in Magic the Gathering probably already knows because he has a really popular YouTube channel and he does really great videos. Non-traditional type of videos. He doesn't do things that we do where he like looks at cards that were printed and says, oh, what kind of decks could I build out of these, or how much is this card going for? He goes more into the lore and the history of Magic. But
okay.
I saw this tweet. I showed you some of his videos before. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I do.
We watched one of them briefly on the podcast. We watched little clips, the Seb McKinnon.
Yeah, okay.
It was on the art of Seb McKinnon. But I saw this tweet asking my girlfriend what she knows about Magic through osmosis. She does not play. One of the things she says, I know Commander is what everyone plays. Another thing she said is, I know the basic land game. Tyler says that's the coolest thing she could have said. Mike said exactly what I was thinking. I want to hear more about the basic land game. Why don't I know the basic land game? I've never heard of
me neither.
Basic land game. I first saw this. I know the basic land game. I thought, is she confused? Does she just hear the words basic land a lot and she thinks that's a game? Or is there an actual game around it that I don't know? There is an actual game around it. It is real. I needed to learn more about the basic land game. So I did some research. And what I need to know now is for any listeners to still tell me what the hell the basic land game is or what the land game is. I know in general, but I'm having trouble figuring out, is it like one thing? It doesn't seem to be. I look into the basic land game, you seem to get different answers depending on where you look. I'm getting the feeling that it's very much a thing that like all groups have their own variation of, and it seems to have evolved plenty over the last like 15 to 20 years. So the earliest article that I found referencing the land game was from 2006. It was on the Star City Games website. And I actually couldn't find it on the Star City Games website any longer. I had to go to the Wayback Machine. I'm going to have to cut this out because it's taking forever loading. No, maybe I won't cut it out. Forget that. Come to me, baby. Here we go. You're almost there. Have you ever played the land game? I haven't, Daniel. That's a question Daniel Voigt asked in 2006. In this article, he talks about the earliest version of the land game that I found referenced in print. It is very different than the contemporary versions of the land game that I saw in more recent articles. So from this 2006 article, Picture this. It's Pro Tour San Diego 2004. You're walking around late at night, monitoring side drafts and standard tournaments when you see a group of about 8 players gathered around a table. These players aren't part of any of the organized side events, and yet they're screaming and yelling like they just won the Pro Tour. All Daniel saw was basic lands. A group of players from Asia were all gathering around a couple players playing what I would eventually translate into the land game. It was a simple way to pass the time between events or even just between rounds, and it appeared to be horrendously fun. So I think this is where it started, like on the Pro Tour, which is why you and I would never hear of it, because we were never PT grinders. We didn't know any PT grinders. We were just, nerds in the Midwest who played at the kitchen table on occasion and would build like 65 card decks just because there's no Pro Tour. He says, after watching these players go back and forth for no less than an hour, I got a general idea of what was going on. Each player had a deck of 60 cards that consisted of 12 of each of the 5 basic lands. Each land type appeared to do 3 different things. It was a creature or 1 or 2 different spells. And this is what he gathered. A swamp could be a creature that's 2/2. You could pay 1 life and regenerate it. So what I'm gathering here is at this stage, the game, you still started with some certain amount of life, probably 20. And the way to win was to use creatures to attack your opponent and reduce their life total down to 0. So a swamp could be a 2/2 regenerating creature. It could also be Dark Banishing or a Night's Whisper. Dark Banishing is an instant that destroys target non-swamp creature. Night's Whisper is a sorcery that draw 2 cards, lose 2 life. These are spells that I'm not familiar with. They were obviously printed after we quit the first time around and we haven't learned about yet.
Dark Banishing sounds familiar, but the fact that it says non-swamp creature, is that like a errata for this game?
I'm assuming, yeah. It's probably target non-black creature.
Is Dark?
Yeah, look them up. Tell me when they were first printed.
Dark Banishing was from Ice Age, and it was in Mirage and Tempest.
My lord!
I thought it was. It's 2 colorless, 1 black casting cost.
That was my heyday.
And it buries a non-black creature, so it's like a terror, but it hits artifact creatures too.
Okay. A mountain could be a 2/2 creature with haste, or a shock, which deals 2 damage to target creature or player, or an earthquake for X equals 3, deals 3 damage to each player and each creature without flying.
Night's Whisper is a modern card.
Okay, so it must have been printed sometime between 2003 and 2006 when this article was written. Scourge is 2003, old frame. The first modern frame set is Mirrodin. I don't know if that was printed later in 2003 or 2004. But Night's Whisper had to be like 2004, 2006, right? What set was it first printed in, do you know?
No, because this is out of order sometimes here. 5th Dawn.
That sounds like an early modern set.
Yeah, I think it's 5th Dawn. Looks like it's first printing. It's been printed a few times recently. Then Lord of the Rings, March of the Machine, Commander, Phyrexia Obi-Wan Commander, Dominaria United Commander.
Must be popular.
Yeah, it's 1 black, 1 colorless sorcery. You draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. I like that. It's a pretty cool card.
Popular, or one of those cards that nobody ever plays, but they still won't stop reprinting over and over and over again. Forest could be a 3/3 creature, or it could be a Symbiosis, an instant where 2 target creatures get +2/+2, or a Giant Growth. I know that one. An instant target creature gets +3/+3. See, now we're getting into cards that I know, spells that I know. Plains could be a 2/2 creature with first strike, or a Healing Salve, prevent the next 3 damage to a creature or gain 3 life. Did you say but why?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too. They just had to do it. Or a Righteousness. There we go. Now I'm talking. Target blocking creature gets +7/+7. This is the kind of creature that the kind of card that we thought was sweet, like when we first started playing.
I still like Righteousness. I mean,
I do too. It's not bad, but compared to how much I loved it when I first saw it as like a 13-year-old,
Yeah.
It doesn't hit the same for me.
When you open this out of a pack revised, it was the first time like you saw +7/+7 like printed on anything. You're like, whoa, that's a big number.
Island could be a 2/2 creature with flying, or a counterspell, or catalog, a spell that I'm not familiar with. A sorcery that allows you to draw 2 cards and then discard a card.
I saw this card recently, I think. It's from Urza's Saga and 8th edition.
Oh, okay.
Normally it's 1 blue, 2 colorless.
1 blue, 2 colorless, 3 mana to draw 2 cards, discard a card.
Yeah.
Daniel says the challenge when working on this was keeping it simple. The game was originally designed so that players could pick up a stack of land and be able to play without having to have a list of what the cards did or have anything written on them. Thus, we made an effort to balance the game whilst trying to use generic cards that we were all familiar with. In many cases, they were existing cards that worked well with the format and were things that everyone knew, things like Giant Growth and Healing Salve. So, trying to balance familiarity with gameplay, it evolved a little bit. They arrived at this list. A swamp became a creature, 2/2, that you could pay 3 life and give +1/+1 to until end of turn. Dark Banishing or Dark Whispers. Is it Dark Whispers? Was that different?
No, that was the same.
Not, it used to be Night's Whispers.
Oh, Night's
Draw
Whispers,
2
sorry.
cards, lose 2 life.
Dang.
Dark Whispers, draw 2 cards, lose life equal to the number of cards in your hand. Very similar card. Mountain, 2/2 creature with haste, a shocker and earthquake. That's the same.
Yeah.
Forest,
the same.
3/3 creature. Mini Symbiosis or Giant Growth. So they felt like Symbiosis was too powerful in the initial format. 2 creatures get +1/+1 instead of giving 2 creatures +2/+2.
Okay.
Plains was a 2/2 with first strike, Healing Salve. They got rid of our boy. They got rid of Righteousness. They changed it with Chastise, which is a spell I do not know. Destroy target attacking creature, gain life equal to its power. That's pretty cool.
That's better.
Yeah, that is.
I wonder what the casting cost normally is, but
I like this. I like making white more powerful, which is something you don't usually see. They were
Chastise in Judgment 8th and 9th edition was originally 1 white, 3 colorless instant. So it was 4 casting cost.
That's too much for that spell, but cool in this game. Island, 2/2 creature with flying, or a Muddle the Mixture, which is an instant counter target non-creature spell. Okay, they felt like counterspell was too devastating, so they went with a limited counterspell.
Yeah, so they were saying that the fact that people were using it to counter creatures too much.
Or an opt. What was I going to do next? Okay. Or an opt. So this article written in 2006. This was how the game went when Daniel and his buddies put it together in 2006. Maybe this was just limited to this guy's playgroup. The game was described much differently in a blog post I found on another site in 2016. And there's this site. I don't know this site. I'm going to butcher this word. Haruruya?
Yeah, sure.
HaruruyaMTG.com. Japanese company, maybe. So I looked at the article here. A casual format, the lands, casual format, lands. Casual format that uses only basic lands, we call it lands. For this format, a game takes approximately 5 minutes. We usually play in between rounds during a Grand Prix or other large tournaments. So it's something to keep busy when you're waiting for your next game to start at a tournament. To play, each player needs to have a 25 card deck composed of 5 copies of each of the basic lands. So the deck's gotten smaller, not 12 copies, just 5 copies of each. Plain, island, swamp, mountain, forest. This is a difference that I see depending on who I'm listening to and what I'm reading. Like the size of the deck changes. Some are like 25 cards, some are 50 cards, some are 60 cards. And it doesn't sound like in this version you have life points, and the goal is not to whittle your opponent's life down to 0. The goal of the game is to have 1 of each basic land in play. If you do, you win the game. Essentially, you're trying to achieve domain. So players start with a 4-card hand, draw a card each turn. The player on the play doesn't draw on turn 1. Players have access to 1 free mulligan to 4 only and no mulligan afterwards. Players can play 1 card maximum per turn. When they play a card, this is also very different. They play it face down and pass priority. If your opponent chooses not to respond, then you turn the card face up. So you play face down. You're like, do you want to do anything about this? They have to make a choice. Then you play it face up. Then they figure out what the card actually is. The basic land abilities. Plains, return a card from your graveyard to your hand. Island, only during your opponent's turn, you can discard the island and another card to counter an opponent's face down land. During your turn, island does nothing when turned face up. Play a swamp, target player discards a card. Play a mountain, destroy target land, so it's a stone rain. Forest, you draw a card. I'm listening to music. Take on Me by Aha is blaring outside my window. Could you hear that?
No.
Okay. Picked it up on my mic, but not in the recording, apparently.
So wait, these effects are only when you play the land, or you can tap them for that?
I think when you play the land, and that's what happens.
Okay.
It doesn't say anything about tapping or anything like that. It's just I think you play
the
weird
land, thing is that the
happens.
blue, it looks like all 4 lands except the island have an effect when they come into play, but the island. Oh no,
It's
you
just an
discard
island.
it. I see. It's not when the island's down. It's you're still you're discarding it instead of playing it. Okay.
Yeah, to play the island, it's just an island.
Okay.
But you can counter another play if you have an island in your hand and you discard it. Which makes sense because in this game, it seems like, the counter ability is probably the most powerful ability. So I think they're trying to weaken it. So, okay, if you're going to counter something, then you don't have an island in your hand to play anymore.
Yeah.
It'll be that much harder to get domain, potentially. So this is the most recent version of the lane game that I found written up clearly on a website anywhere. There were other mentions of it in posts. I think this is probably closest to what the lane game really is. But if anybody out there knows whether there is one semi-standard lane game, or if it's just something that is just total chaos and it differs between every play group, let me know. Let us know. I want to know what the land game is, if there is a land game. This seems like it would be a good future video idea for Ristic Studies, because he likes to do these historical videos. One of his more recent videos was all about Chaos Orb.
Oh,
and when he was putting that together, he put out a call to the community, asking people for early stories about Chaos Orb, times it was played in their play group or at tournaments. He asked people for pictures. So, you ended up with photographs of people from back in the day when they would tape their deck to the wall. So their buddy couldn't throw their Chaos Orb. I don't know if he got any pictures of anybody ripping up their Chaos Orb or not. We never did anything crazy like that. You had a Chaos Orb, right?
Yeah, for a little while.
And people would be irritated with your Chaos Orb. But the worst we ever did is we would spread cards out all over the...
One of the reasons, the smart thing to do without getting wacky is to just be, you play your cards more spaced out. Because everyone had this tendency to like, you have your basic lands and you have like 9 of them stacked real tight, like together.
Yeah, that's what I like to do, make a line. Yeah.
Yeah, and that would be devastating for a Chaos Orb. But so people would spread it out, but I think I got rid of it after not too long because it just made so many people salty. People didn't want to play against it. It had a sort of like outside the rest of the game kind of thing going on, which I understand. Plus, I don't remember the ban history of the card, but it probably got banned while I owned it, and I was like, never mind then.
Yeah. I love the Chaos Orb. And actually, if I were to ever buy like one of the more expensive old school reserve list cards, that'd be the first thing I would buy.
Really? You like it that? I didn't know you liked it that much.
I see how people play it now when I watch old school games, and it's removal of anything in any kind of deck.
That's why I liked it, because it's like 2 casting costs, and it can hit multiple cards of any type for removal, which is
Well, now in old school, it can't hit multiple cards.
you just hit one card with it.
The way they play it, is they like take one card, they move it into place, and then you flip it onto the one card.
Oh yeah.
You have to name the card you're targeting. If it hits that one card, that's it.
Okay.
But still, like I am in the slow process of putting together an old school deck, and it's just going to be a mono green deck because it's the only type of somewhat competitive old school deck I could actually put together. And a Chaos Orb would be awesome for that deck because that's like the only way you have to get rid of a lot of things. And you don't have Naturalize in old school, unfortunately.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you don't have a lot of big creatures. You have a small swarm and a giant growth and a berserk. But if you have a Shivan Dragon on the other side of the table, it becomes very difficult to deal with.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I thought that was cool. I didn't know the basic lane game. Ristic Study's girlfriend knows the basic lane game. I had no idea what it was. Now I have an idea
never heard of that.
of what it could be, but it seems like it's multiple things. Okay, Alex, that's the end of segment 2. What is the land game? I think it's time to move on to segment 3, which is the Old Man Magic Commander Corner. This is the segment of the show where we build our first ever commander decks. They are old frame only commander decks. I finished building my commander deck already. It is called the Pump. It's a green creature swarm deck where I play as many green creatures as possible. I pump them with pump spells. I have a bunch of token generators. I pump them with creatures like Jacques Laver and Keza that give green creatures pluses. And that's the whole strategy. It's a very basic creature-based strategy. I don't have any. I think I want to swap some things out, but I haven't decided yet what I'm going to swap out. So my deck for now is built. We're going to move on to Alex's deck, Group Mud, which he's still in the process of completing. His commander is Corona False God. And today, Alex has a card or two that he's going to add. He's getting closer. You're getting closer to the end. I can't remember how many cards you have to add still.
Yeah, just a few. First, let's throw some islands in. I need some islands.
Oh,
just real quick, we'll do that. Try to do
how many islands do you have right
each
now?
time.
You have a tropical island. You have no other islands. This is one of the viewers' favorite parts of the episode. Always when we add basic lands.
Yeah.
I zoom in real close to the land, and then I hit the button. They watch the number go up. People love it.
We're gonna go with Tempest. I've just been using Tempest for almost all my basic lands and deck building at the moment.
I like it. I like it. Not
until
this
I'm
version.
Tired of them, and then I'll switch to something else. Probably
not this printing, whatever that printing is.
Weird thing.
Not the Doctor Who printing.
I saw that the other day when this came up when I was going to look at lands, and there's
did too.
Crazy pyramid, and
I'm like, I don't think I love it. What is this? Is this? Oh, I was wondering if every land was just going to have like a telephone booth in it.
That's the Doctor Who interdimensional spaceship or whatever it is.
That's how they time travel.
It's called the TARDIS, I think.
Yes. Not to be confused with tardigrade, which is what my mind always, that's the word that always forms in my mind every time I hear or see TARDIS. It is not a tardigrade. Which Tempest Island, Alex?
So the tall one.
This one that's out of frame?
Yeah, the tall one.
So tall it's out of frame. Tall as possible. How many are we going to do? This is what's exciting for the viewers.
Let's do 5. How's that sound?
1, 2, 3, 3,
5.
4, 5.
Sweet. I have some more islands. Next
5. There we
week,
go.
planes.
That was intense. Oh, we're doing planes now.
Next week is
Oh,
planes.
okay, okay. I was gonna say it's gonna be too much excitement for one
Maybe.
week if we go with
Maybe.
planes now.
Let me throw a few more defensive enchantments in today. A frog tongue.
Okay, you got a lot of enchantments in this deck. You got 18 enchantments already, and you have different creatures that the enchantments synergize with. Ephemerif enchantment, Argothian enchantress. I said Ephemerif enchantment, Ephemerif enchantress, Argothian enchantress. Some other things I probably can't think of right now. Frog tongue. Frog tongue was discussed in one of our cantrip episodes. It is an enchantment that allows creatures to block creatures with flying, right?
Correct.
And it's a cantrip. When Frog Tongue comes into play, draw a card. Enchanted creature can block creatures with flying for just 1 green. Mana efficient. And it replaces itself.
And then I will add a Lash Knife Barrier, another cantrip that we talked about recently.
Another cantrip that we talked about on our cantrips episode. A cantrip that you played against me with when you were playing your Pestilence Wall of Hope deck. Lash Knife Barrier. 2 colorless, 1 white enchantment. When Lash Knife Barrier comes into play, draw a card. If a source would deal damage to a creature you control, it deals that much damage -1 to that creature instead. What else was in that deck of yours? Wall of Hope, Pestilence, but there were other things that
Plague
allowed you to gain
Spitters.
life. Plague Spitters. There were other ways that you had to gain life too, right? I never saw the Exalted Angel come out, but I found out later there were Exalted Angels.
Mostly the Wall of Hope, I think.
Wall of Hope. Hey,
I had Mothers of Runes for defense.
Protection.
Yeah. I think that was it for life gain. Oh, I had Death Grasp, like a drain life.
That's right.
Yeah.
I knew there was something else in there. Okie dokie.
So there we go.
2 cantrips and 2 enchantments added to the deck. Group Mud is coming along. What do you have? Like 10 more cards to add, something like that? 24. Plus 7 is 31.
Too. Double check the land count.
Plus 10 is 41. Plus 3 is 44. Plus 20 is 64. Plus 32 is 96. You're
I'm about
closer
full.
than I thought.
Yeah. I must
Did I
have
do that right?
calculated.
It seemed like easy addition. Let's double check. Playtest. Library. 88 plus 7 in hand, which is 95, plus your commander, which is 96.
Yeah, okay, dang. Well, the rest of my
Holy
spots are
smokes.
planes.
Holy smokes.
And then
Let's
I'm
see.
probably gonna have to take a couple cards out to put a few more lands or something in.
Let's play test, Alex. Boom. Island. Boom. Seal of removal. Boom. Next turn. Forest. Pass the turn. Scrub land. Enchantress's Presence. Whenever you play an enchantment, draw a card. Island. Elephant Grass. Draw a card. I got a Tangle, a Darkness, and a Fling, and a Regrowth in my hand.
Okay, it's not bad. Some defense.
Mana War. I just bounced your shit back.
Yeah. Okay.
Nantuko, Phantom Nantuko. Trample. Phantom Nantuko comes into play with 2+1/+1 counters on it. If damage would be dealt to Phantom Nantuko, prevent the damage, remove a +1/+1 counter. Tap to put a +1/+1 counter on Phantom Nantuko. Okay, so he can get bigger. Then this guy comes out.
Oh,
Forgotten
yeah.
Ancient.
That's
Okay.
what I'm on early on. That's good.
Okay, it's going. Okay. Okay, Alex. Okay. That's group mod. Should be finished next month in September. Only took us 8 and 9 months, respectively, to build our first ever commander deck. Well, everybody, I think that's the end of episode 55. Thank you for listening this long. I know everybody who clicked the play button is still listening, however much longer later it is from the time you hit the start button until the time it ends. I'm not sure how long the episode is. An hour and 15 minutes. We thank you for your support. We thank you for your time.
Thank you.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to us on YouTube. We're growing every week. It's very exciting. We're at 125 subscribers on YouTube. That's more than we ever thought we would get. And now I'm getting a taste of fame and I want more. I need more. I need more subscribers. I need to get 10,000 subscribers. I need to get 50,000 subscribers. My favorite subscribers, though, are our first 100 subscribers. They're the OGs. They were with us at the beginning, Alex, when nobody believed in us. Those initial 100 subscribers did believe in us. Actually, the 25 that came after that, too, they also believed in us. So I love them equally as much as the first 100 subscribers. We appreciate it. If you don't go on YouTube and you just listen to podcasts and stuff on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you could subscribe there as well. We're on those two platforms. For a long time, I was pretty bad about getting the episodes up on time on those two platforms. Sometimes I post every week on YouTube, but sometimes I'd let like 5 or 6 episodes pile up before I converted them all and posted them on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. So we'd go like a month and a half without getting new audio only episodes up. But I'm getting better. I'm doing them the day after they go up on YouTube. So every week in your podcast app on your phone, you're going to be seeing another episode of the Old Man Magic podcast. I've also recently redesigned the logo. I think it looks better. Let me know if it doesn't. If it looks like dog shit, tell me. And then I'll get sad and I won't change it because I'm not a graphic designer. I'm trying my best, people. Anyways, I don't have anything else to add today, Alex. Do you? Do you have any words of wisdom?
I want to, no words, but I have a request. Okay. I'm looking for like an upgrade substitute for cockatrice in green, maybe black, pre-modern. They didn't call it Death Touch back then, so I'm not sure if I'm getting the things that I want by just searching for Death Touch. There might be an older card that does something like that without saying Death Touch. So green cockatrice upgrade card in pre-modern. I'd like to hear a suggestion if anyone
I don't know if there is, because I've been building a lot of green and I'm like, flyers would be wonderful. I even thought about putting a cockatrice in my old frame commander deck just because I'm like, it's a great blocker. It's a great flyer too, an attacker. It's a great attacker too in a deck where you have the ability to pump creatures because they might not want to block your cockatrice. They'll be like, okay, I'll take the 2 damage. Next minute, giant growth, symbiosis, invigorate, berserk. You're in trouble. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
But yeah, I would like to know that too, if there is anything like that. Otherwise, you're just going to have to frog tongue some bitches. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Frog tongue it up. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Talk to you next week.